I'm excited to introduce our next speaker. He will give us all a great introduction to the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. And he has the decades of experience to speak from. With an international background in architecture, placemaking, and graphic design, Harry leads teams across RSM's 3 studios, blending branded graphics with experiential placemaking to enhance user experiences.
Hey, good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? All right, how many Dallasites do we have here? Do we have people from Dallas? Okay, y'all will know a lot of these buildings and the designs, and sure we'll have opinions on many of these. And so this will be hopefully will be a lot of fun. So when I first met Sibel and she was beginning the planning of this conference, we had a very engaging conversation about what makes Dallas, well, Dallas. What defines Dallas as a place? What does this bold, innovative spirit of Dallas really mean, and what makes Dallas design unique? What does it mean to think big? The theme of this year's conference. Our discussion went in a number of different directions as we chatted about the character of design in the city, and I set out on a brief journey to try and define why I have this love-hate relationship with Dallas design. The city I've spent the last 45 years in, well, honestly, and as my partner Suzanne knows, with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I set out on a journey to investigate just a small part of Dallas design. And by no means is this comprehensive. It can go in many different directions, but it's just a sampling for everyone to get you to think big. And it's a bit eclectic. It goes off track a few times. And for sure, I definitely need a good editor on this, because as much as I was practicing this, I'm at about 32 minutes. So no music to push me off the stage quite yet. So what should I call this journey? Dallas design, the good, the bad, and what in the hell were they thinking? The big, bold, and questionably beautiful. Go big or go home. The good, the bad, and the excess. The good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. The list kept going, but I think you get the point. Dallas likes to do things in a very big way, with big experiences, big visions, and definitely big personalities. With the big thinking has definitely come innovation in experiencing design and architecture, and Dallas's success has definitely come on the heels of this creative thinking. The Dallas spirit is well known. Without natural features to define Dallas's reason for even being here, our distinctive natural resource is our spirit. This remarkable spirit has built the city and driving desire to make something striking in the middle of a flatland prairie. In the 170 years since its founding, a passion to build and create has definitely been present. Texans think, well, I think they actually know, that everything is bigger in Texas, both real and imagined. Physically, there are the big hair, the hats, the big boots, the ranches, definitely big sky out there, wide open spaces, money, and plenty of big designs. Psychologically, we think of big personalities, ego, will, and power. All of these layers play into a myth. What the world has come mistakenly to think of as Texas is symbolized, I would say, by the opening frame of 1948's Red River, Howard Hawks' movie about the Chisholm Trail cattle drive that went through Fort Worth. By the way, for those that are familiar with Texas geography and are acquainted with the movie, the opening scene was actually filmed in Monument Valley in Utah. It wasn't even filmed here in Texas. The specific myth of Dallas, however, has also been expanded by the media. And while one can focus on many myths about Dallas, there are plenty of truths about the propensity for thinking and building big. Dallas has embraced this bigness, even including in their past tourism campaigns, Live Large, Think Big, a campaign from 2004 to 2012. Big Things Happen Here, a follow-up campaign from 2012 to 2021. But these dated and tired taglines used for over 15 years, often relied on outdated cliches about cowboys and all things big. So let's get it out of our system and look at just a few of those big stereotypes. Dallas would like to claim that big hair in the 1980s originated here in Texas. The big hair houses, or McMansions, of the North Dallas suburbs embrace a style that completely ignores the heritage of Texas, Texas's vernacular design altogether. And rather than performance, this residential style places value on much more superficial features. Even God is big in Texas. The DFW Metroplex is located in the Bible Belt and is home to 3 of the largest megachurches in the country, with, for example, one church in the suburb of Plano, Prestonwood Baptist Church, having a weekly Sunday attendance of over 15,000 people, and their very small annual Christmas show features a cast of 1,000. That is Prestonwood Baptist Church, not an arena, on the right, and a block away from us is First Baptist Church on our left, also not an arena. So the other thing that's really big in Texas are the freeways. Y'all have been experiencing those, no doubt. And they're endless. And actually, respectfully, they're quite fascinating. The Dallas High Five here at the intersection of LBJ, 635, and Central Expressway is one of the first 5-level stacked interchanges in the U.S. and one of the highest in the world. It is as tall as a 12-story building and includes 43 bridges, 700 support columns, and strangely enough, even includes a hike and bike trail underneath all of those levels of the interchange. That makes it sustainable. Dallas is passionate about all of its sports franchises, no hoops and hollers here, but it's the bigness of the star brand that plays such an important role in the myth of Dallas. It is, of course, one of the world's most iconic sports brands and actually the most valuable sports franchise in all of the world. And one can't think about big design in Dallas without mentioning Big Tex. Making his debut at the Texas State Fair in 1952, this 55-foot tall icon wears size 70 boots and sports a 75-gallon hat. So with just a few of these big cliches out of the way, let's dive into this design journey of what makes Dallas design unique. This investigation truly only scratches the surface, but I'm going to take you on a brief journey of design in Dallas, including the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. For a number of years, I was fortunate enough to be the editor of a magazine here in Dallas called Columns, published by the Dallas AIA and the Architecture and Design Foundation. This publication focuses on the conversation of architecture and design in Dallas. It was through my involvement in this publication and through the many conversations and articles about design in Dallas that I know that a lot of today's insights in this talk need to be attributed to. The design journey began in the 1970s when I was a very impressionable teenager who landed in the big city of Dallas from the Midwest. What I did not realize at the time was that this was a pretty transformative era in Dallas's design history, and it set the tone for much of the city's design thinking afterwards. But before diving into why that particular decade of the 1970s, and I know many of y'all were not born in the 70s, was so transformative in our city's history, I'll take a brief step back and share 3 observations on the growth of Dallas and the origins of this big thinking. The first one I want to share was in 1934. The original Pegasus sign that you see here on the top of the 29-story Magnolia Tower was the tallest building west of the Mississippi for over 20 years. A 30-foot tall icon of porcelain and neon made by the Texlite Sign Company. It was conceived as the symbol of Magnolia Oil, which in 1959 was folded into Mobil Oil, today is ExxonMobil. The city of Dallas actually has an agreement with ExxonMobil to continue the use of this image, the Pegasus, as a symbol for the city. You see it throughout the use in the city. Since it was introduced nearly 90 years ago, this red-winged horse, born from Greek mythology, has served as a symbol of wealth, power, and optimism. 2 back-to-back Pegasus panels rotated 1 revolution per minute. Why 2 panels? Because, as was quoted at the time, Dallas definitely doesn't want to be known as a one-horse town. The second, in 1935, when the president of the Texas Centennial Committee spoke before a congressional hearing in Washington, D.C., to explain why the federal government should commit money to help the Lone Star State commemorate its 100th year anniversary of the independence from Mexico, he predicted that the word Texanic, a word invented to describe this centennial celebration, would soon join gigantic and titanic in the dictionary. Though Texanic never quite found its way into everyday English, there's no better way, I feel, to describe the impression made by the 1936 Texas Centennial Exposition in Dallas at Fair Park. Fair Park is now a National Historic Landmark containing the largest surviving collection of Art Deco exhibition art and architecture from America's golden age of the world's fairs. And finally, leading up to the 1970s, architecture and design does not exist in a vacuum. It is in the expression of a city's history, culturally, naturally, and economically. And in that vein, cities' experiences have turning points in their growth. For example, at the 1871 fire in Chicago resulted in the way high-rises buildings would be constructed everywhere, or persistent earthquakes in San Francisco created the necessity for new design thinking in architecture and design. However, trigger points of change aren't just attributed to natural disasters. In Dallas, no doubt one defining moment was the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, and it drastically affected the world's opinion of our community here in Dallas, rocking the city's self-image to its very core. It forced the city into a state of critical and emotional self-examination that extended into the area of architecture and planning for the future growth of the city. Born from this was an initiative called Goals for Dallas, which boldly set forth the city's aspirations for the future in both public and private initiatives. We'll see a few of these results come as we move forward through the conversation. But let's go back to the design journey for just a moment. Those were some of those precursors to the 70s. My first plane ride was in 1975 at the impressionable age of 12. And it was on this coolest design airline ever, the colorful Braniff International, of course, headquartered here in Dallas. Braniff was known for its design and its revolutionary designs in art, in fashion, and in graphic design, having hired such design luminaries as Alexander Girard, Emilio Pucci, Halston, and Alexander Calder, who actually painted one of their planes. We landed at the recently opened DFW Airport, one of those initiatives born from the Goals for Dallas after the Kennedy assassination. DFW remains one of the most critical economic generators of success and growth in Dallas and the whole region. In 1974, when it opened, DFW was the largest airport in the world, covering an area larger than the island of Manhattan. Designed by Gio Obata of HOK, it now ranks as the third busiest airport in the world by annual number of passengers and is the first carbon-neutral airport in North America. Regarding its design, Obata felt that the romance of the jet age was a thing of the past, that air travel was becoming a nuisance of modern life, and through the design of the airport, he wanted to elevate the expedience over the inspiration. He set out to design, in his words, a no-nonsense airport. Of course, the critics had a field day with this at the time, calling it monumental and frighteningly mundane at the same time. After landing in the endless repetition of North Dallas and growing up in a big hair house, I found myself watching a lot of movies and being influenced by the design and architecture as represented on screen. So in 1976, when the movie Logan's Run was released, I was infatuated with the designs and the futuristic set designs as portrayed in the movie, only to find out that many of the scenes were filmed here in Dallas. Michael Anderson, the director, had searched the US for the most futuristic cities at the time to incorporate into the movie. And he settled on Dallas with a few scenes in Fort Worth and Houston. He wanted to use the context of each city to depict the faceless authoritarianism of the futuristic dystopian world depicted in the movie. Memorable scenes involved the world headquarters of the Zales Corporation, which is on the left, also headquartered here in Dallas. And note the gold glass. That gold glass will be an important, play an important conversation in another building. The Dallas Market Center on the upper right, an incredible interior space. And the Fort Worth Water Gardens by Philip Johnson, actually in Fort Worth on the lower right. That memorable gold glass would reappear in my design consciousness the following year in 1977 with the opening of Campbell Center in Central Dallas, using a mirrored glass with actually real microscopic coating of real gold. Cementing a place in American television, the buildings were portrayed as the offices of Cliff Barnes, the nemesis of J.R. Ewing on the TV show Dallas. I so appreciated the show for using this particular building to represent Dallas's fascination with money, power, and superficiality. The following year, during this decade, of this influential decade, another important building that personified the future of Dallas was completed, the Dallas City Hall. The Dallas City Hall was designed by I.M. Pei. It was one of the many projects that intended to remake Dallas's image into that of a progressive, forward-looking design and model city of the future. That the push to hire an architect of national distinction was a direct result of the city's soul-searching after the Kennedy assassination. Now, although complaints about the empty plaza have persisted, City Hall's bold form, and one could debate whether it's actually brutalist or heroic, deserves more admiration for how it embodies optimism and the potential for design to inspire new thinking about civic and cultural identity. For some, the new building served as a symbol of Dallas's ability to cast off the past and embrace the future, while for others, it was an arbitrary form, a shallow pursuit of world-class status. And on a side note, and back to my fascination with movies, if the Dallas City Hall wasn't iconic and big enough, it was enlarged and imagined as the base of the skyscraper that served as the Detroit police station in 1986's RoboCop. The movie was filmed in Dallas and used the skyline to substitute for Detroit, representing a dystopian future created by greedy capitalism. I think we're getting a connection here with movies. The same year that I.M. Pei's City Hall opened up on one side of downtown, on the other side of the city, another iconic building was completed. Ending this influential design decade of the 1970s and perhaps ushering in a more flamboyant era of design that was to come in the 1980s and truly defining the Dallas skyline as we know it today, the Reunion Tower and Hyatt Regency development rose up from the Trinity River. Designed by Welton Beckett out of Los Angeles, who actually also designed the Capitol Records building along Hollywood Boulevard, which became an icon of the landscape of Los Angeles, this visionary design defined the image of Dallas. Some say at this point tacky and dated, but I admire the scaleless, defining landmark as a great representation of Dallas's visionary aspirations. Mark Lamster, the current architectural critic of the Dallas Morning News, spoke about the use and the abundance of mirrored glass and its role representing Dallas. We saw it with the gold, we see it with the blue, you'll see it everywhere throughout the city. And to quote him, he says, "No city adopted the material with more vigor and variety than Dallas. This mirrored glass defines the city's shimmering architecture. It is who we are: superficial, status-driven, and self-obsessed, but also bright, stylish, and modern. Okay, so there's another important side of Dallas design, and I selected a very different icon to contrast with the status-driven superficiality that we've been looking at. Just down the street from Reunion is one of the more, shall we say, unique experiences in Dallas, and that is the Longhorn Ballroom. Before you get to the building, you are greeted by one of Dallas's largest and most iconic signs that includes the world's largest longhorn steer at 14 foot high, 21 foot long, and 18-foot horn spread, corralled in an iron fence with wagon wheels. We all want to design something like that. Once past this sign, you see nearly 250 feet of a faux facade, a Western-themed bonanza that fronted one of the most famous music venues and honky-tonks in Texas. Its history is as fascinating as the exterior is kitschy. Once run by the infamous Jack Ruby, who killed Lee Harvey Oswald, it evolved into one of the greatest country western venues of its day, and being so well known that it said that you never are worthy of playing the Grand Ole Opry until you play the Longhorn. In 2017, various additions and changes over the years were removed, and the original faux facade and murals were restored. And the building is now under review by the National Register of Historic Places. While the building is unabashedly kitsch, it is an important touchstone for its cultural significance and representational of oftentimes neglected facets of Dallas design. Fueled by the oil industry and successful real estate market, the 1980s were particularly busy with plan after plan of gigantic complexes and skyscrapers. Construction during these years resulted in about 15 million square feet of office space in downtown Dallas alone. So back to the RoboCop reference. I wanted to share with what the director, Paul Verhoeven's sentiment was about Dallas in the 1980s. Dallas was astounding. It was postmodern and futuristic. Every other downtown was a plain old skyscraper downtown. Dallas just rose like a phoenix with strange and compelling buildings. Downtown towers sprouted up literally every other year in that decade, each egotistically claiming the skyline in their own way, adding the conventional assertion of corporate power. The Trammell Crow Center on the left, just a block away, designed by Richard Keating of SOM, the first of 3 iconic towers that he designed along the skyline. In the center, the Bank of America Tower, the tallest building on the skyline, designed by local architects JPJ, but with its lighting outline, which was envisioned by New York lighting designer Theo Kondos, was the first of the many lighting features that downtown towers borrow today. You'll see at night when you walk around this evening, towers lit up in all kinds of creative ways. And the third on the right, the Fountain Place, also another block away the other direction, a 60-story minimalist sculpture designed by Henry Cobb while at IMP's office. City Place, designed as a single-use corporate headquarters for the Southland Corporation or 7-Eleven. Momentum Place in the center, Philip Johnson's postmodern contribution to the skyline of Dallas. And the Chase Bank on the right, also by Richard Keating of SOM, which was, in 1987, the tower that marked the end of the Texas real estate boom, being the final skyscraper that was built in the state for the next 20 years. And if one tower in Dallas isn't enough and big enough, think that they intended to actually have 2 of each of these, 2 Fountain Places, 2 City Places, both of which were not realized in those forms because of the 80s recession. But this biggest era of design didn't stop in downtown. Completed in 1986, this 10-acre postmodern behemoth on steroids with hokey historical touches landed in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas. Claiming to be contextual to Dallas, the neo-French classical design was meant to evoke the historical architecture of Galveston, over 300 miles away, and at a massive scale. The entire complex is clad in acres of Indiana limestone, even eclipsing the Empire State Building in the amount of limestone used, and covered by the world's largest slate roof. Upon its opening in 1986, critic David Dillon lamented the overscaled Crescent complex as corporate America meets Napoleon Bonaparte come together on one site, and describes its decorative iron filigree as architectural psoriasis. Who designed this? Philip Johnson. The city's love of Johnson perhaps ushered in Dallas's fascination with star architects to come. There are 9 different Philip Johnson designed buildings in the DFW Metroplex. And again, to quote Mark Lamster, the author of the definitive biography of Johnson, Dallas has perhaps more bad Johnson than anywhere else. The Crescent is perhaps his worst building. And while we're speaking about postmodern referential buildings, past the car dealerships on the way in from the airport, past the strip clubs and the fast food joints, you may have noticed Dallas's landmark, the Infomart. The designers decided to settle on a modern interpretation of the Crystal Palace built in 1851 for the Great Exhibition of Technology and Arts. The palace represented the future of technology for that time during the Industrial Revolution. So you don't have to be a design and architectural enthusiast to see its resemblance to London's Crystal Palace, creating a modern-day doppelganger. But why place a 1.6 million square foot massive structure with Victorian styling in Dallas? Who knows? I couldn't figure it out. But after struggling to fulfill the original vision, it has been largely converted to data center uses and now is the 5th densest data center hub in the US, with actually growing need for more capacity. Fueled by civic pride and an influx of oil revenue, Dallas's love affair with celebrity architects began. And as we saw it began with I.M. Pei and Philip Johnson. Dallas is well represented with a growing list of Pritzker prize-winning architects. The works of 7 winning architects are located here in the city, with the majority of them concentrated within about 2 blocks of where we sit today. 5 of them can be seen from the Arts District. In typical Texas fashion, this makes Dallas, according to The Atlantic magazine, the city with the best architecture per square mile in the US. No comments on that from other cities. The Dallas Arts District, the largest arts district in the country, at 68 acres and 19 city blocks, is the centerpiece of the region's cultural life. Starting just a block away, you encounter one of the most incredible collections of architecture and design found anywhere. Anchoring one end of the Arts District is the Dallas Museum of Art. I think there's a tour there this afternoon by Edward Larrabee Barnes, followed by and adjacent to the Nasher Sculpture Center by Renzo Piano, with the Gardens by Peter Walker. Coming across the I.M. Pei's only Symphony Center, the Meyerson Symphony Hall on the lower right, followed by the Winspear Opera House by Norman Foster, the Wiley Theater by Rem Koolhaas, the Booker T. Washington School for Visual and Performing Arts by Allied Works, and of course, ending it with the Moody Performance Hall by SOM. It really is a fascinating walk. But critics have had many opinions on Dallas and its dating game with star-studded cast of architects, suggesting this relationship with celebrity architects is not mutually beneficial. Christopher Hawthorne of the Los Angeles Times writes, "Cultural buildings by Koolhaas, Foster, and others can be stunning and as aloof as a runway model." And Blair Kamen of the Chicago Tribune noted, "Is it a good idea to organize arts buildings in such a clear and concentrated fashion? Even some of the architects who've designed buildings here privately refer to the district as an architectural petting zoo, long on imported brand name bling and short on homegrown urban vitality." But the dating game with star architects lives on. The Perot Museum of Nature and Science, also on this afternoon's tour, by Tom Main and Morphosis. The Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge in the center, and the Margaret McDermott Bridge, the two Margarets, both by Santiago Calatrava. Again, if one's not big enough, let's do two, by the Spanish artist, architect, and engineer Calatrava. And the list can truly go on with amazing architecture throughout the city by other star architects. But in this short conversation, I wanted just to highlight a few of those. So we're getting really close to wrapping this up. And I wanted to kind of share a few closing thoughts. The other day when I was sharing a draft of this with a friend, she asked, so what are your top experiential designs in Dallas? You've shared some of the good, some of the bad, and some of the very questionable designs. But what are your favorite experiences? So here goes with my top 10 design experiences in Dallas. North Park Mall. It is in Dallas where the shopping mall has reached its ideal form, the mall to end all malls. And I hate shopping malls. But Raymond Nasher of Nasher Sculpture Garden fame assembled in the 1960s what was amounted to a dream team of consultants to design this incredible space. It included architect Lawrence Halprin. It included architect Eero Saarinen. It included graphic designer Herb Rosenthal from Los Angeles, who created the center's iconic logo, which still is timeless since its inception in 1965. And if the shopping wasn't good enough, the art is pretty incredible. And even their tagline, the art of shopping. The Fountain Place, we've already seen. It is the ultimate minimalist skyscraper, a virtuosic essay in the architecture of subtraction, a stunning prism that truly changes shape and light and form throughout different times of the day. Number 8, Fair Park Hall of State and the Hall of State. The combination of architecture, art, history, graphics, Texanic culture, and other grandeur at every corner is one of Dallas's finest resources. The Nasher Sculpture Center by Renzo Piano, and a local project called the Cistercian Abbey by local architect Gary Cunningham, where he describes it as neo-Romanesque. The landmark is equally a work of Texas vernacular design and handcrafted modernism. Clyde Warren Park, also a block away, which is a deck park that links uptown and downtown. And my first love in design in Dallas, the Reunion Tower and the Hyatt Regency. This building epitomizes what Dallas is all about: stylish, iconic, bold, and representing the future. The historic Bankhead Highway. For those that don't know about the Bankhead Highway, it was the first interstate that linked Washington, D.C. and to San Diego. And as it comes through Dallas on Jefferson Boulevard and other surface streets, it is truly one of the most amazing dilapidated streets that has dilapidated tourist court motels, service stations, diners, incredible roadside signage, and it's one of the best motorcycle rides in all of Dallas. Sorry, Dallasites, but when someone comes to visit me in Dallas, I take them to Fort Worth. The museums in the Cultural District by Lou Kahn, Renzo Piano, Todd Ondo, Philip Johnson, and Ricardo Legaretto, and the iconic historic Fort Worth Stockyards. And finally, while Dallas is known for everything being bigger, the city identifies with iconic bridges, large developments, flashy architecture, and endless highways. It's neighborhoods like Bishop Arts and Oak Cliff that truly define the backbone of Dallas design. Dallas Morning News critic for 25 years, David Dillon, launched his career with a critical, provocative article that asked, why is Dallas architecture so bad? And in the article, he bemoaned that what he saw as a general and longstanding complacency with mediocrity in building design. And he blamed it on the architects, he blamed it on the corporate clients and the city policymakers. 30 years later, when Rem Koolhaas was visiting for the Wiley Theater, he called Dallas the epicenter of the generic. While true on some levels, I disagree. Thanks to Dillon and for other big visionary thinkers in the city, they have called for a higher caliber of design. Design in Dallas is much better today. Visit Dallas has dropped their big references, and their current marketing campaign really speaks about the diversity of the city and the people that are doing creative and compelling things. And I'm encouraged by this new brand positioning. Dallas has built its success on the creative and bold thinking of visionaries here in the city that continue to transform the region. So let me share one final incredible collision of influences that wraps up my journey into Dallas design. Originally created for the 1936 Texas Centennial and perched outside of Plinth in front of the Swine Building at the Fair Park here in Dallas, embodied what has been called a genetic collision. One will find the legendary Woofus. Proudly standing at 9 foot tall from hoof to horn, the bronze, concrete, and metallic patina sculpture is the amalgamation of 6 domesticated animals: the head of a sheep, the horn of a longhorn, the neck and mane of a stallion, the body of a hog, the tail of a turkey, and the wings of a duck. The current symbol of Dallas that we saw earlier, the Pegasus horse, may be the more elegant creature. But if you ask me, and echoing the sentiment of critic Mark Lamster and many others, the Woofus, like Dallas, it's not exactly beautiful. Its diverse parts joined, not quite comfortably, yet with a lovable, idiosyncratic character, is the more perfect symbol for Dallas, and it more accurately delineates the eclectic character of Dallas design. Thank you.